Hi, everybody. So, today I wanted to teach you guys about how to be disciplined without becoming hypercritical. And this is something that I struggle with as well as someone who wants to totally live up to my potential and create and express myself and get a lot of shit done. And maybe a lot of you also struggle with being a hyper overachiever and trying to just figure out how do I hold this stamina without being mean to myself. And maybe others of you struggle with getting shit done and taking action and not wanting to start beginning to take action from a place of anger, from a place of shame, from a place of guilt. Because what will happen is we'll get inspired, we'll start wanting to do more, we'll start wanting to create more, and then we're not holding up to that ability to take action every day, and then we're mean to ourselves. So how do we develop discipline without developing an inner critic? And there are 4 things I want to talk about here. And the first one is that there's 2 types of love. There's paternal love and maternal love. Paternal love, like loving yourself like a divine father, and maternal love, loving yourself maternally. So maternal love is loving and accepting yourself for who you are. And it's so important that we develop that acceptance of ourselves, that unconditional love that we have. And then there's the paternal love, the divine father love, which is loving yourself for who you could be, loving yourself for who you're becoming, loving yourself for who you're wanting to grow into. And paternal love is that deep, deep, deep belief in yourself that you are inevitably going to become a certain type of person. And in order for it to be inevitable, there has to be action taken. But notice the difference between forcing myself, notice the difference between it needs to happen versus it's inevitable. That inside of me has that potential to create a certain life for myself. And if I bring online the paternal love, that's going to help drive me to become that person. So we talk a lot about inner parenting or childhood, like inner child healing. And what I've seen in the inner child world is more the maternal love of loving yourself unconditionally and unconditionally accepting yourself. And there's less talk about how do I bring this paternal love online? How do I bring in the divine father who says, I know you can be all these things. I see it. I see you going there. Let's practice. Let's keep going. Let's take another step. I believe in you. So really starting to bring that father energy online. And if you're someone who's struggling with both, I would say start with the maternal love of unconditional love and acceptance, and then bring the paternal love online. If you're already knowing how to do inner child work and you're already knowing how to do some maternal love, start getting that inner father online. So that's number 1. Number 2 is so important, which is remembering your why, which is just such a classic, like, if you know why you're doing it, it's much easier to do the hard things, the mundane things, the nitty-gritty things. So if I know that I am building a business because I want to help women reclaim their power, waking up in the morning and sending 5 emails and doing a phone call with customer service for my back end, and then, responding to text messages and listening to voice messages and all of that, it feels much better because I know my why. And I know that every small step I take is a little brick in this temple that I'm trying to create. So if I remember the why, the small bricks actually feel meaningful as opposed to just gross, mediocre living. So it's really important when we're developing discipline to just really remember our why, and maybe saying it in the morning, maybe saying it before you take an action of this is why I do these things. And then it's going to get easier and there's going to be less resistance. So number 3 is we need to take pleasure breaks throughout the day. So if you have a day filled with meetings, with sessions, with doing admin work, exercising, like doing all the things to make you the high functioning adult that you are, take pleasure breaks. Get up and stretch a little bit, move your body, maybe sweat, maybe eat something delicious, have a nourishing meal, dance in the middle of the day. It's not illegal to enjoy your day-to-day life. It is not illegal to have pleasure throughout the day. It is not a distractor, and it is not going to sabotage your growth. Actually, it's going to help support your growth to take pleasure breaks throughout the day. So that's number 3. And the last one that's super important is when it comes to discipline and trying to create the life that you want, make sure that you have smaller milestones. Because if you only make a milestone of, I'm not going to stop until I'm at 100K, in my business, that's going to be painful on your system. So we really want to make smaller milestones. You can still have your big why, which is I want a 6-figure business, or I want to build a family, or I want to birth a book or a project or a retreat, whatever it is. But we need to make sure that we're having smaller milestones. So this way you can celebrate more often, and that you can also see your traction more often, and the discipline feels less hard when the milestone is a little bit closer. So something that was such great advice for me when I was hiking the PCT, which is a hike from Mexico to Canada, and you're 600 miles in and you still have another 2,000 miles to go, you are not going to feel good thinking about Canada. So the best advice I got before I hiked the PCT was to think of it as 50, or I think it was 25-day backpacking trips, where I just go out for 5 days and then I get to a town and then I celebrate there, and not to think about Canada. And yes, that was my big why, was to get to Canada, to hike an entire country. But if I thought about it at all, I would have quit because it was too big. It was way, way, way too big. So really taking bite-size goals. And once it was brought into that of just, it's only a 5-day trip, then from that town, I would decide, do I want to do another 5-day trip? And then it became much more easier, and to the point that once I got to the halfway point, then I was able to start thinking about Canada. But it was way too hard to think about Canada from the start. So when you're starting a journey, make the goals smaller. You can still have that ultimate goal, but make those milestones smaller. So yeah, that is how to have discipline without growing an inner critic. Smaller bites, pleasure breaks, remembering your why, and developing an inner father voice that loves you for who you're becoming. And yeah, sending y'all love. Hope it was good. Let me know what your thoughts are.